Hey guys, it's Jenny. Alrighty, today we're going to discuss about watering orchids in ceramics and clay medium in general. Recently, one of my viewers has asked me to make a demonstration video for how I watered my orchids, as they seem to have a little issue with knowing when to water orchids in this medium. So today I'm going to talk you a little bit through it and show you how I water my orchids. And this video will actually be part of a sort of series of videos in which I will explain how my setup works. I have new subscribers all the time that ask me why I use certain things or how things work. So this video series will always be linked down in the description, starting this video onwards. So without further ado, let's get to watering orchids. Alrighty, so the type of water that I generally use is osmosis water. This is my system. I have it installed under my sink and I have a full video about it. You can check it down below in the description. Now the osmosis water is stored in this trash can actually, which can hold 100 liters. Being that osmosis water is not produced all the time, I need to store it, and this is a perfect way to do so. It is black and it does not promote algae. I also use a graded cup and the lid to prevent it from evaporating. I also use 2 jugs that can hold 4 liters of water because my spraying can actually, which we'll get to, can hold 4 liters as well. These come in handy when I need to fertilize, and I can mix the fertilizer first in this jug, make sure it is properly mixed, and then dump it into my spraying bottle. And this is the spraying bottle that I use. It's a normal spray bottle that has a pump, but I cut away the nozzle so it doesn't spray anymore. As the name suggests here, this delivers a pretty steady jet of water now rather than spraying. And as I was saying, this can hold 4 liters of water. So that is the water and the utensils that I use for watering. Now, when I water my orchids, being that clay has some specific properties and is very different from bark and sphagnum moss, I never actually let this medium go completely bone dry. And I have here an example. As you can see, the medium in this pot is still a little bit damp, but it's not completely dry. This is the color of ceramics when it's completely dry, and you can see the color in the pot is definitely not as light as this. At this point, it is safe for me to water this particular orchid. If I would let the medium get drier than this, I can actually risk desiccating the roots. When clay gets dry, depending on the actual product, it can sometimes start to withdraw moisture from the actual roots and desiccate them. So in order for that not to happen, I never let this medium get completely dry. I prefer to water when everything is damp. So how do we know that ceramics is damp and not soaking wet? Well, it will come with a little bit of experience, but I have an example to show you. So in this pot, the ceramics is quite wet still, and this is because it creates this little mark with the pot. This means there is actually enough water for the ceramics to not be able to absorb anymore, so it has excessive water, which transfers to the pot. While in this case, we have no such thing. There is no drop of water that spreads on the pot. So this medium is damp, yes, but it doesn't hold enough water to overflow. At this point, the ceramics in particular starts to absorb water, or can absorb water. So by watering this pot now, the ceramics will absorb a bit more water and will not start to desiccate the roots. When deciding if I need to water a particular orchid, of course, I need to take into account the preferences of that orchid. For example, Cattleyas orchids don't need to stay super moist and super wet all the time. When the medium reaches this state, it's okay for me to actually water a Cattleyas orchid as well. It's okay to water an Oncidium and most other orchids. But there are orchids who do like to stay a little bit more moist. In the case of the Masdevallia here, I prefer to maintain things rather moist, soaking wet actually, than let the medium go way too dry. At this point, you might be wondering if there is any chance to actually suffocate and rot the roots if I maintain them constantly damp. And the answer is no, it's actually very hard to suffocate roots in this medium. One of the problems that traditional organic medium poses is compacting. Bark not so much, but when it starts to degrade, it definitely compacts as well. Sphagnum moss can compact and is very known to compact if used incorrectly or in time. And this compacting of the medium actually eliminates the air pockets. That's actually what suffocates the roots. With the addition of water, the medium decomposes even faster, and also due to the density of the water, the air pockets yet again are minimized. Both leca and Ceramis are pretty hard materials. They will never compact unless we action on them with quite the force. So no matter how much I actually water this pot, I will never be able to completely eliminate the air pockets. Unless, of course, I totally submerge the pot in water. So even if I maintain this medium soaking wet, air pockets will still be there, and this means that the roots cannot get suffocated. There are other things that might happen, yes, like an abundance of bacterial and even fungal activity, so letting the medium dry out a little bit definitely helps with that and also brings in more air, but generally clay medium is not predisposed to suffocate roots pretty much no matter what if we are using large enough chunks, and as we can see, if we leave quite a few air pockets around the root system. Practically, the way that I water my orchids is with the use of a spray pump. Being that I'm using Ceramis, which is very quick to absorb and actually retains a lot of water, I do not need to ever soak this pot to soak the material itself. It's enough for the Ceramis to come in contact with water just a tiny bit for it to absorb really fast its mass and water. So for this reason, I never actually have to go to the sink and run water through the pot, but I do provide water with the use of this sprayer. So what I do is just spray water on the top of my pot. This being a big pot, I can spray quite a lot of water. And at this point, we can start to see water flowing to the sides. At some point, it will reach the tray. For now and for this orchid, I think this is enough because whatever water I place there will get dispersed evenly throughout the pot. So even if I water it here, the water will definitely go in the back as well. Again, this is due to the absorbent properties of the Ceramis. So for this orchid, the quantity that I just poured in is more than enough. But now let's talk about the issue of the water in the tray. For traditional organic medium, leaving water in the tray is a no-no when it comes to orchids. But this is only due to the properties of that medium. As I was saying, the more water in contact with organic medium, the faster it decomposes. Also, organic medium such as bark is not as efficient as Ceramis as dispersing water. So with organic medium, this would not be an ideal thing to have. But with clay, it actually doesn't matter, because clay can suck up water from wherever it comes in contact with and divert it all the way to the top and evenly throughout the pot. And this is a principle that stands on the basis of semi-hydroponic growing. The semi-hydroponic system implies a reservoir of water in the pot and clay medium. Popularly, leca is used. Being that Ceramis is faster and more efficient at absorbing water, semi-hydroponics is not something that I need to do. But my setup is created such as to work as a semi-hydroponic setup as well. So the fact that I am actually leaving water in the tray would be equivalent to a semi-hydroponic type of system. In a few hours, this water will be completely gone because the medium will absorb it and direct it to the top. And being that right now the weather is really warm, we're going into the summer, this is actually how I water my orchids. Water evaporates very fast in the climate that I have here. So leaving the water in the tray is what I'm doing now. But in the winter time, when things are cooler and water doesn't evaporate so fast, I do not need to leave water in this tray. Case in which, if I ever seem to provide a little bit too much water, I can simply lift the pot, dispose of the water, and pretty much that's it. Now, as you might have noticed, I did not use a big quantity of water, compared of course to how we would normally water orchids, let's say in bark chips. Since I'm using osmosis water, which is not available at all times, one of my goals is to be economic with water, and this setup actually allows me to be very economic. I can also water very, very fast. I don't need to move my orchids from their places, but the drawback with this type of watering is that I am not actually flushing the pot. So bioaccumulations as well as salt accumulations are inevitable in my setup and the way that I water it. For this reason, once a month, I do soak my pots simply to flush them out. And for this, I am starting to use decorative containers such as this. And practically all I need to do is fill the decorative container with water, let the orchid soak for about half an hour, Remove the pot, dump out the water, and put it back. This is not done to properly hydrate the orchid. It is already hydrated. I'm just doing this to remove salt buildups and also bioaccumulations. So let's demonstrate that as well. So here I have my Masdevallia orchid. All I need to do is fill this container, and I filled it with water all the way to the top. You can see the level is quite a little bit on top of the pebbles. And now I can move on to other orchids and let this orchid sit. As my orchid is soaking, let's talk a little bit about the frequency. It really depends. My growing space is really dependent on what's going on outside. In the wintertime, watering was needed every week or every 10 days or so. The way I watered was a little bit different. I just placed only a tiny little amount of water in the pot. I didn't let it accumulate in the tray, and if it did, I would have dumped it out. And I waited for the medium to get a little bit drier than this. Now that it's warm, I need to water my orchids anywhere from 3 days to 5 days. Depends on the orchid, on the size of the pot, the size of the root mass, and all of those things. But pretty much right now I'm going to a more of a semi-hydroponic type of watering, in which I do leave water either in the tray or dish, either in the decorative pot a little bit, and it evaporates really fast. It gets soaked up by the medium really fast. This doesn't happen in winter, but in spring and summer and even autumn it surely does. Watering my entire orchid collection takes about an hour when I'm in a hurry, to an hour and a half when I look at the orchids a little bit more, so it is a very fast type of watering considering I have around 200 orchids. Being that it's warm, I do water my orchids all at the same time, but in the winter time, there were many times in which some orchids required water while others did not. So watering in winter takes even less time, but it spans on multiple days. Right now, I just prefer to water everybody in one go, and I'm pretty much set for most of my orchids with the exception of the very tiny pots, which dry out really fast. Alrighty, so I think my Masdevallia is soaked now, and behind, well, the pot was kind of clean now, but usually what's left behind is a little bit of a foam. That's the bioaccumulation. That tells me that this pot needs flushing, and that's something extremely important to do in my setup. It is very economical, it's very fast to water my orchids, but once a month it's really crucial that I soak them like this. I flush them if I don't have time to soak. I really need to get water running through the pot and eliminate salts and biological material. With time, I did get quite adjusted to watering this medium, and right now I'm not actually looking at the medium to see how much water I need to dose and so on. Watering orchids goes actually pretty fast. All I need to do pretty much is place some water on the surface of the pot, and as you can see, I'm pretty sloppy. And this is because I already know whatever water is in this pot will get distributed evenly, and that's how I water my orchids super fast. In winter time, I need to be a little bit more careful than this, of course, but right now, pretty much I know how many seconds I need to dose in order to get a pot pretty wet. One last important thing to mention is the ventilation holes. As you can see, all of my orchids do have ventilation holes. This again improves their circulation. It is always important to provide air to orchids as well as moisture. But in the traditional semi-hydroponic setup, these are not present. We have that reservoir that has 2 holes or 1 hole depending. But as you can see, my setup is just a hybrid between semi-hydroponics and traditional setups. I'm not using a reservoir, but I can always create one. I can always provide ventilation, and I can always flush properly because I have drainage holes at the bottom. And why not ventilation holes that can act as drainage holes as well? And this is only due to my environment, which, as I was saying, is very different depending on the season. So right now in summer, I pretty much run the semi-hydroponic version of it. In the winter time, I just treat it like a normal setup. But of course, when it comes to watering, I always keep in mind that water will be distributed, so I don't need to hassle to the sink and flush it and all of that. Also in winter, I don't tend to flush all that much because I don't fertilize all that much. I don't tend to keep things really wet, but rather damp. And of course, it's a lot more economical in winter than in summer, but what can we do? Now in the description down below, I will share with you the semi-hydroponic system if you're not acquainted to it. I'll link you to the First Rays article, which actually developed this system, so you can learn more about the principles and all of that. And I will also link you down below to my initial video in which I describe the medium, both Ceramis and Leca, and their properties and why I use them in such way. If you're thinking of trying this medium out, from the point of view of watering, I can only advise you to think about your environment, how cold it is, how dry it is, or how wet or humid it is, and all of that. Pretty much all the orchids I own can do very well in this medium, with the exception of pure terrestrial orchids. I still have doubts with those orchids. And also with the exception of vandas, which never did okay for me potted up, but now they're pretty much bare root. Although I use pots, they don't have medium in them. They just have a few strings of a textile to maintain moisture, but that's pretty much it. The pots that I use with vandas are simply used because I did not have a basket, and that's pretty much it. So these are the two exceptions. Other than that, Paphiopedilums do absolutely fantastic in this medium. Cattleyas as well do very good in this medium. Oncidiums do enjoy it. I tend to keep them a little bit more wet. Masdevallias enjoy them. Not to mention Phalaenopsis orchids. They do grow pretty well in clay medium. I didn't really have a lot of issues with particular species of orchids, except the pure terrestrials and also the vandas. And that's pretty much it. In future videos, of course, I will touch base with the pebbles that you see and you might wonder, what's that all about? Also the pots and all of that, clay pots versus plastic pots and other issues. But for now, this is about it on watering. Thank you for suggesting this video. Hope this was useful. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe to my channel for regular orchid and plants videos, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Check out the description below. If you're watching this video at a later date, maybe by now I already made the video about the pebbles and all of that. And remember that in the description I will share as much details about my setup as I possibly can from now on. And with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Bye! So the beautiful Melissa Brianne has decided to throw out another little bloom. I just purchased this orchid. I didn't get a chance to repot it just yet, mainly because I ran out of pots. But about the Melissa Brianne, it's still fishy. It still smells like fishy something. It's not bad, it's just fishy. Beautiful orchid, but really fishy smell.